What if the next breakthrough in AI wasn't a faster NVIDIA chip, but a rack full of living human brain cells? This isn't science fiction anymore. Researchers in Singapore have switched on what they're calling the world's first biologically integrated server rack, a system powered by 16 million living neurons instead of billions of silicon transistors. So how does a server powered by brain cells actually work? Can it beat today's AI chips? And should we even be building computers out of living tissue? Let's find out. At the National University of Singapore's Life Sciences Institute, researchers teamed up with Australian biotech company Cortical Labs and data center operator Day One to build something that's never existed before. A standard-looking server rack, but inside it, 20 biological computers called CL1 units. Each CL1 contains around 800,000 lab-grown human neurons. Stack all 20 together, and you get roughly 16 million living brain cells working inside one rack. This isn't software pretending to be a brain. These are real neurons grown in a lab. They're alive, and they're processing information. The neurons start as adult stem cells. Scientists reprogram them into cortical neurons, the same type found in the human brain. Those neurons are then grown directly onto a microelectrode array, a tiny chip covered with dozens of microscopic electrical contacts. Think of it like this. The chip speaks electricity. The neurons speak biology. The electrodes send tiny electrical pulses into the network. The neurons respond. The hardware listens. Then it immediately sends the next signal. That entire conversation happens in under 1 millisecond. To make this possible, Cortical Labs built its own operating system called BIOS, short for Biological Intelligence Operating System. Instead of sending commands to a CPU, it translates software into electrical patterns that living neurons can understand. Now comes the weirdest part. How do you train living neurons? Not with backpropagation. Instead, the system uses neuroscientist Carl Friston's free energy principle. The basic idea is surprisingly intuitive. Neurons prefer predictable environments. When they make a correct decision, the system rewards them with stable electrical signals. When they're wrong, they get blasted with chaotic noise. Over time, the neurons reorganize their own connections to avoid the chaos. That's how these cells learned to play Pong in just a few minutes, and they needed far fewer training examples than conventional AI systems. Now let's talk about energy consumption, because this is where things get really surprising. The biological server rack contains 20 CL1 units, and together they house around 16 million living neurons. Despite that, the entire rack consumes only 850 to 1,000 watts of power. That works out to just 25 to 30 watts per CL1 unit. Now, compare that to one of today's most powerful AI chips, the NVIDIA H100. A single H100 draws around 700 watts on its own. So an entire rack of 20 biological computers operates in roughly the same power range as a single high-end AI GPU. Now, to be clear, this doesn't mean the biological rack is more powerful than an H100. It's not. Silicon GPUs still dominate when it comes to raw computing speed, massive parallel processing, and training large AI models. But where this system stands out is energy efficiency. For researchers exploring the future of low-power computing, especially in places like Singapore, where data centers face strict energy efficiency targets, that makes biological computing an incredibly compelling area of research. So if it won't replace ChatGPT, why build it? Because living neurons excel at something silicon struggles with, learning from very little data. Instead of needing billions of examples, they can adapt from just a handful. That opens some fascinating possibilities. Drug discovery. Scientists can grow neurons from human stem cells and test medicines directly on living neural networks. Humanoid robots. Imagine robots that learn efficiently without carrying huge batteries. Cybersecurity. Living neural networks may be useful for recognizing patterns inside noisy, constantly changing environments. And perhaps the most surprising idea, wetware as a service. Cortical Labs plans to let researchers access these biological computers through the cloud for around $300 per week. You'll be able to upload code and run experiments on living neurons remotely.
Before we crown biology as the future of computing, there are some enormous challenges. First, life support. These neurons don't sit on a shelf. Each CL1 has its own miniature life support system. It maintains body temperature, balances oxygen and carbon dioxide, circulates nutrients, and removes waste. That's a lot more complicated than cooling a normal server. Second, they expire. Unlike a GPU that can run for years, these neuron cultures only last around 6 months before they need to be replaced. Third, ethics. Cortical Labs says these neural networks are sentient, meaning they respond to stimuli, but not conscious. Still, as researchers scale from millions toward billions of neurons, bioethicists are asking an uncomfortable question. At what point does a biological computer deserve moral consideration? No one has a definitive answer yet.
This biological server rack isn't about replacing your local cloud provider anytime soon. What it represents is something equally significant, a new way of exploring computing itself. For the first time, researchers have demonstrated a server rack scale system that integrates living human neurons into a computing platform designed for real-world research and development. Whether biological computing becomes a major new field or remains a specialized scientific tool, it's pushing the boundaries of what we think a computer can be. So here's my question. Would you trust an AI powered by living brain cells? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into future technology, don't forget to like, subscribe to Technoverse, and I'll see you in the next one.